So, good morning and Assalamualaikum to all viewers. We are on episode 9 and today's topic is about what your employees are talking, and whether are you listening. So before we get on to the talk, thank you for tuning in to eTable Talk with Sarah, where we aim to bring down the burnt out rates amongst working adults. So if you haven't, please do subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos. Now, getting on to today's talk. So whether you are a lion boss or a pussycat boss, it helps to know how to manage it right. Now, firstly, when employees don't think they're being heard, they'll always take their voices elsewhere. And that's where office gossip starts to happen, and etc. There was a time when employees were expected to do their jobs, keep their mouths shut, and call it a day at 5 p.m. Candid feedback was unspoken and occasionally not so tacitly discouraged. This often led to what Harvard Professor Leslie Perlow calls the silent spiral, in which people are too afraid to speak up and the business suffers. It always does. The flip side of that same coin is when employees do speak up, but they aren't listened to, which one could argue is even more demoralizing, actually. Now, bosses, those times are over. Yeah, this is the new wave, especially so during this COVID era. In the future, which is now, we call it the next normal, it's no more my way or the highway method. It's all about partnership, collaboration. Can be hard to practice, I could imagine, but if you want to sustain and grow your businesses in this era, you don't have a choice here. So we know from our research that when employees feel heard and know that their feedback matters, they feel more valued and connected to their organization. So their feedback is also a valuable tool to understand what employees want and need, and to learn how to change things for the better. You see, in many cases, the best ideas for business improvement comes from our employees. They are the closest to the action after all, yeah? So the problem is that as much as employees value the opportunity to give feedback, they simply don't feel heard. So viewers, I have with me, joining me today is another old friend of mine whom I met at my first ever corporate job at the Ritz-Carlton, and that was, I think, 20 years ago. We both started from entry level and grew from rank and file to management together. Lee Ng, I remember us doing sales building blitz together, you know, driving in your Proton aerobic car, combing Kuala Lumpur's market. Doesn't time fly, Lee?
Indeed, Sarah, and thanks for having me on this morning.
Definitely. It's a pleasure to have you on board. Now, we parted ways after I got married and moved on to other industries, just because the hotel industry holds extreme long hours. Oops, not supposed to mention here, but you kept on sailing, yeah? You kept on being brave, exploring all the opportunities in the field. Now, viewers, Lee is multilingual. Other than Malay, English, and few other Chinese dialects, he lived and worked in Cambodia and Thailand. Also gets by with Khmer. Is that how you pronounce it, Lee? Khmer? Khmer? Khmer and Thai. Khmer. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Well, we can call it Cambodian.
Cambodian. Okay, cool. Now, Lee has climbed up the corporate ladder well and good, with portfolios of Director of Sales and Marketing, and General Manager with international hotel companies. Lee has also worked in Singapore, China, Vietnam, and throughout the journey, he is very well versed on dealing with various stakeholders, including employees, business partners, owners, and bosses itself, yeah? So officially welcome you on board, Lee. How's it going so far for you today?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Right. So let's get on with the discussion today. My first question to you would be, you know, how do you actually manage the prototypical difficult boss throughout your corporate journey there?
Well, Sarah, I think both you and I have worked with bosses. At the same time, some of us may have also managed other people, and some of us may have also had experienced being bosses ourselves. Well, first of all, I think we need to look at who is a boss. What's the role that a boss plays? What is the role that he or she is supposed to play? And what is the role that he or she actually plays in the real life situation? And of course, in today's topic, we are looking at how well do bosses carry out their role, right? And just like all things, and just like all humans, things could exceed expectations. Therefore, bosses can exceed expectations. Bosses can meet expectations, that therefore be on the mark. However, sometimes, unfortunately, bosses can also fall short of the mark.
Yeah, and we use the word unfortunately. Yeah, no, definitely. Now, my second question to you, Lee, if you feel you've been criticized, unfairly, we all go through that by your superiors, your bosses. What would be your tip, or what's the best way to confront the boss with your concerns here?
There are several ways to look at this. Before even going to the confrontational stage, because I think the word confront is a very, could be a potentially explosive word. Mm-hmm. So before we even maybe moved or even consider the word confront, the employee, we may want to look at trying other avenues first. And one of that could be trying to perhaps improve your relationship with the boss. Whether you are working whether you are working independently or whether you are working with other peers or with superiors, you are still part of a team. Therefore, it might be good to, when you try to improve your relationship with the boss, to communicate your concerns. And perhaps one way to do this is to work with the flow and go with the flow, and perhaps try to work with your boss instead of going against him or her. And part of that, of course, is the communication process. So in communicating with the boss, it would also be good to always remember and perhaps take notes or recap your session with the boss, and also perhaps be proactive to anticipate issues that may arise that might involve the boss related to in terms of your work performance. Another very important part of this is also, I think, is how we approach our daily work. So I think it's very, very important to have a positive mindset. Part of this is perhaps to identify your boss's strengths and leverage on those. Now, there is a difference between working with the boss and identifying and trying to learn and identifying and using your boss as a positive way to move forward. And there is a very, very thin line between this and kissing the boss's ass. Mm-hmm. Some people might wish to go with that, with that direction. But in terms of your boss's strengths, I'm sure, just like everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. So in terms of your boss's strengths, if you are able to leverage on that, it could be something that you could use as your own developmental point. It could be something that you could pick up to improve yourself. It could be something you could do to learn. It could be a new skill that you may not have acquired before. And in doing so, you also automatically put yourself in your boss's shoes. And when you do that, you try to understand the situation from your boss's perspective. You might have concerns with your boss or with the way your boss treats you because of XYZ reasons, but those concerns probably originate from your own perspective, from your desk. But if you are sitting at your boss's desk and if you are wearing your boss's shoes, how would he or she envisage things, and how would he or she view you in terms of your own performance? So in that sense, it's almost like looking in the mirror, but trying to imagine yourself in your boss's shoes. And perhaps by doing that, you could then realize or come across certain things that you may not have, that might not have occurred to you before. And with that, it could also help you understand from where your boss is coming from, and it could also help you understand your boss's angle on why he or she is giving this instruction, why he or she is giving this feedback, or why he or she is treating you the way that that you're being treated. But of course, in doing so, you have to prepare to yourself to be able to listen to accept criticisms from your boss.
Those are, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Go on, sorry.
Now, I was just going to say those are valid points that you're sharing with us today, Lee. It's also important for what you're saying, trying to say is empathy is also key in dealing with your bosses and keeping your mind open enough, not stepping in to a discussion as a boss yourself and blocking everything off. That's not going to do justice, isn't it?
Of course, IQ and EQ are always relevant, always play a role in work relationships. And of course, unfortunately, not all bosses, not all bosses necessarily have very high empathy or EQ, but that does not mean that you cannot have a high EQ to try and make yourself understand from where your boss is coming from. And like you said, if somebody feels that they are being unfairly criticized by their boss, then in terms of improving that communication process, the first thing to do is to be proactive in communication. And to be a bit more specific, perhaps you may want to bring up your concerns and share your concerns with your boss. In doing so, however, there are also some very useful guidelines on how to do this. I mean, obviously, you're not going to ask your boss for a sit-down discussion the minute he or she walks into the office before they even sit down at their desk, right? So timing is very important. So look and consider what is a right time. Is it best? What best suits your schedule and what best suits your boss's schedule, and then perhaps approach him or her, and then propose the appointment and make the appointment. So pick a right time, and of course, a lot of times discussions with bosses have a default location, which is either the meeting room, or your desk, or his or her desk, or his or her office, which is fine. Just make sure that that both of you are in a comfortable environment where you are able to freely speak to each other without being interrupted, and therefore you have the privacy to be able to share and communicate information without other people who are not supposed to be there listening on. And during that session, of course, it would be good to prepare beforehand, and you may want to rehearse in your head, or you might even want to list it down on bullet points, whatever makes you feel comfortable. But it's very important to plan what you want to say, present your case in a step-by-step logical manner, and go through in your head and then explain your concerns and explain your point of view to your boss. It would also be good to start off with saying, I believe that, by saying to your boss, I believe you have such and such concerns, or you may have given such and such feedback during our meeting or during our feedback sessions about points A, B, and C, and therefore I would like to have an opportunity to be able to explain myself why I took such steps. This is just an example, but it would be good to be able for you to be able to explain your points in a logical manner. Stick to the facts.
Yeah.
A lot of this is extremely, extremely important because obviously when we feel we are being unfairly criticized, there is always an emotional part of it because emotion comes to play. Why is my boss criticizing me for something that I feel is not fair? So you need to put that emotion aside, stick to the facts, and stay calm. Number one, by keeping calm, that level-headedness, it will help you create a basis of trust with your boss. And by keeping a handle on your own emotions, it also allows you to think logically. It also very subtly communicates to your boss that you are trying to communicate effectively. You are also not letting emotions get a better hold of you to control your situation. Try not to raise your voice. Sometimes, of course, people might get emotional and they can't help themselves. Sometimes some tears may come out. That's okay. But as much as possible, just try to stick to the facts. And with that, your boss should be able to take it and be able to understand from where you are coming from.
Actually, I would appreciate that. I mean, if I were to be the boss and my employees were to come up front, because very often I think bosses don't know what's going on. There are two types of employees. Either they just keep quiet and go and let things blow out to proportions, or the employees could have that option to be daring enough to come in. Yeah, like what you said, right timing, right location, and listing down all the points and sorting out the matter with the bosses. That could be the better way. At least the bosses have ideas on what's really going on. But unfortunately, some employees prefers to, they don't have the guts to, you know, to be upfront about these things. But it's good that you're sharing today. Be daring enough to sort out the situation. That's all part of the communication. Communication is very important, and it has to be two ways.
Well, correct. And like I said, you know, none of us work in individual silos.
Yeah.
You know, in a work environment, whether you're in the office or in part of a group, you're always part of a team. And it nowadays it's almost impossible for a single person to be successful by himself or herself without working with other people. And other people could mean your bosses, and other people could also mean your staff, people who report to you, and other people can also mean people who are on the same level with you, who are your peers. It's also very hard to understand or what is going through the boss's mind. So the only way to do that is to try to improve the communication process so that you give yourself and you give your boss a chance to be able to share what he or she thinks of you. And at the same time, you are also giving your boss an opportunity for you to share how you feel about, you know, your ongoing relationship with your boss. And yeah. I think this is the very first step to try to improve things, whether you're trying to improve the relationship, whether you're trying to improve your own work conditions. But this is something that I think everyone owes himself or herself to do.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. Especially in a state where we are humans are still the engine of, still for a lot of companies, we need humans to function an organization. And we have different profiles, different backgrounds, different behaviors. So it's important to understand this way. Now, perhaps you can share with me further, Lee, what are some of the issues that you may be unhappy about and that could lead you to look for other opportunities?
That's a very good question, and that's also a very broad question. Of course, the number one concern that is always present in every worker's mind: salary, remuneration. But other factors that come into play could also be physical work conditions. The office could be very cramped. The office could be very cold. The office could be very hot. You know, your desk might be too small. Your desk might be too big. You might not have a place to sit. You know, it could be physical work conditions. It could be unrealistic goals that have been set. It could also be more serious issues like harassment. But it could also be not so much work related, but perhaps factors like traveling distance, location of the office. So these are all factors that could, that could play a role in whether people stay or go. But let's bring this back into context. When we're looking, where bosses are concerned, and where this question about issues that could cause employees to be unhappy, then it's very much looking at the professional relationship between yourself and your boss. Now, in my previous company, Starwood, they came up with a very good guideline, and this was done together with a consultant called Scott Bedbury. And they look at something which they call the universal human truth. And how I put this into perspective in terms of employee satisfaction is that humans are all, other than having skills and the right skills and right qualifications, we are also emotional creatures. Every human being laughs and cries and gets angry and gets sad, right? So part of us, we all need to feel that we belong to the office. We all need to feel that we belong as part of our family, as part of our friends, our social circles, and part of our work environment. So when people feel that they are not part of the team, that is a bad sign. That is when they feel that it's time to go, because they don't feel that they are, number one, they don't feel that the company is significantly contributing towards them, and they don't feel that they are contributing in any way towards the team. This also brings on to them feeling special, as to when they feel that they are not being heard, when their views are not heard, or when their work or their achievements or their contributions are not being recognized, then again, they don't feel that recognition there. So why should I continue to work so hard for you when you don't acknowledge even my presence? Why should I continue to want to work for your company when you don't even say good morning to me when you walk into the office? Valid? And of course, when we work, we have our aspirations. Some people are functional experts. They are happy to do their job, and they are good at doing their job. They are happy to do that for 10, 20, 30 years until the day they retire. Some people have aspirations to want to grow, but whatever it is, people want to reach their potential. So when somebody feels that they are not able to reach the potential, or that the boss is not giving them the right environment to be able to do this, then this is a cause for concern. Similarly, when they feel that their boss does not understand them, which goes back to my earlier point about communicating and improving the communication process, so that you are able to at least let your boss or make your boss understand you better. So, these are, very broadly speaking, issues that could cause unhappiness. But also, it's also very true don't forget what people always say. People do not leave bad jobs. They leave bad bosses. And you know, this is a very clear message for bosses out there to perhaps take a look at yourself.
Those are on point, valid points. And what I could also gauge from what you just shared with us is never try not to underestimate any of your employees' concerns, because different employees has different needs, different emotions, and those are pivotal to have them perform at their very peak. Some people well, I don't know whether expect is the right word, but some people appreciate, some employees appreciate that very little good morning gestures when you walk into the door, and that will make them feel very motivated throughout the day, because they feel that they're loved, they feel they belong. That sense of belonging is so crucial, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct. And I think this is so true and extends to all levels of management. It doesn't matter whether you are a boss of one person or you are a boss of 1,000 people. It's important. Of course, if you're a boss of 1,000 people, it may not be reasonable to expect the boss to personally know every single employee. But having said that, the opinion and how each and every employee feels is just as important. And this is how companies who care about their employees take proactive measures to gauge, to survey, and to find out how their staff feel, so that, you know, they are able to take proactive steps. They are able to address employee concerns through different channels.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily a one-man show.
No, definitely not. And it has to be the collaboration, interdepartment. Say, for example, you as a boss, you delegate this to human resources to take note of all these employee survey. That paperwork mustn't just sit on your desk. It has to be discussed in action with the heads of division. The owners must be present. And you're absolutely right. It's all the... adaptability is key, isn't it now, Lee? Gone were the days where the leaders practices, you know, my way or the highway method. You are rotan you in the morning, you must just work. Gone were the days. Those are 1950s ship. Now the bosses needs to walk through that factory lane and take selfies with the employees, and
yes,
that just makes them feel so belong, because we are on the same level. Lovely. I just want to go back to the earlier statement where we talk about the criticism. Sometimes, you know, employees are a bit hesitant to speak to their bosses about criticism. Is there a way to overcome that fear of retribution from an employee's perspective? How can... because viewers are now watching and said, my boss is a millionaire. He drives Lamborghinis, and, you know, he's got 10 big bungalows. How do I even want to walk into that door and tell him my concern? What would you say about this? Is there any way that you can overcome your tips to have that guts to speak to your bosses?
Well, this is a little bit of a chicken and egg and chicken situation. If you are unhappy about something, if you are unhappy about somebody, and that somebody is not aware that you are unhappy about them, then they will remain ignorant. So if you do not communicate your concerns to your boss may forever not be aware that you have concerns. So are you going to start the ball rolling? Are you going to try to take the first step to say, hey boss, I have some issues here, can we sit down and talk? Yes, there are different types of bosses out there. There are very nice, understanding bosses who might be too busy to be aware. There might be bosses who might have a different level of EQ and therefore not be aware of your issues. There might also be very nasty, tyrannical monster bosses out there as well. So again, there's a whole spectrum of different types of people who are our bosses. And therefore, there is of course a risk of that the outcome of your communication with your boss might not be as what you had hoped for. But then, if you don't take that first step to be proactive, if you don't decide to take that first step to communicate, then you might never really know what the outcome could be. The outcome could be good, the outcome could be bad. But if you don't do it, you will never know. Of course, it helps to weigh the pros and cons. This is not, there is no hard and fast rule about this. Obviously, I think a lot of it is common sense, but you might want to weigh the pros and cons about talking to your boss. And list that down, and that might help you in you presenting your case and in you being able to explain yourself to your boss. And of course, one recourse that you could do is, if some people might go over the boss's head and go to the boss's boss, or they might go to the HR department to express themselves. If possible, I would not recommend going to immediately go over your boss's head, because this could, of course, cause hostility between yourself and your boss, because the boss could then be perceived as, number one, why is my direct report going above my head and not coming to me with their problems? It could also cause hostility, especially if the relationship is already quite strained. Therefore, it could cause it could even exacerbate the mistrust between you and your boss. And sometimes, don't forget, the HR department or your boss's boss might even tell you, you need to first discuss this issue with your boss before coming to me. And then that just puts you back into square one. So my recommendation is, think very carefully your next step. And like I said, think again. If you don't take the first step, you will never know what is going to happen, and you will never know what the outcome is. And also, don't forget, putting yourself back in your boss's shoes. If I am a boss and one of my staff come to me to express their concern, if I do not solve, or if I do not express, or if I do not resolve that issue satisfactorily, then in my head, I would be thinking as well, if that person is not happy, either he or she is going to leave the company, and I will therefore lose that team member, or he or she is going to complain or is going to bring up their concerns to either a different person or to HR. Or even worse, he or she might even then talk behind my back. So this could also open up an entire can of worms for the boss. So in terms of the boss's mentality themselves, most bosses would be aware about this, and they would also know what could be the positive or negative repercussions on whether or not, on how they deal with the situation at hand.
Yes, yes, it does, definitely, Lee. I'll share with you a story, but I think it boils down to how much the employee care about their jobs. Right after Ritz-Carlton, I went on to open up the restaurant business, and after that, I moved on to a business intelligence company industry.
Mm-hmm.
I let go of everything. I started from entry level again, but because I saw the situation of the teams, why they are not able to achieve the revenue. I had valid points, and it's from my own personal observation, and that deters. I could see that could deter my objectives of joining the company in the same place, in the first place, and I could also foresee that that particular situation would not be something that I can't achieve my target because of that. So you know what I did? I don't have any fear within me because I cared for the job. I saw myself very far in the company. And as a junior, 3 months in the company, I picked up my mobile phone and I called my general manager, and he's like way up there. But I didn't care because I knew I had a case, I knew I had valid points, and that is one of the reasons why the team is not achieving the revenues expected out of the owners and himself. So I called him. So I guess I was lucky, or maybe wasn't lucky, maybe I had a good case done with the pointers and everything. He heard me. Went on to an hour conversation with the general manager. And I'll just cut the long story short. I stayed on the company for the next 15 years. There I was climbing. There you go, climbing up the corporate ladder. And it's very valid what you just said earlier as well. If you don't if you don't state your point, you never know what's going to happen. Just do it, and trust your journey. It's better that than wallow in silence and suffer from it. Then you'll be jumping jobs again and again and again in a very short period of time, and that's not what you want to.
Exactly, and your story just highlights the points that I just mentioned. You took the proactive step. You were not happy with the situation at work, and you took the proactive step to approach your boss about it. And you presented your point. I'm sure you were not screaming or shouting or in tears since you were on your mobile phone. And I'm sure you presented your points to him. And from your boss's perspective, I think he heard you. He had the empathy to sense that you were trying to raise your concerns. And I'm sure he also felt that the reason for you approaching him was because you felt that there was a stumbling block, and you felt that it was a situation that he could help and support you resolve, and together you and him could achieve better results for the team.
Yes, so, and we did. So. We flew the team very high after that because I felt appreciated, and he felt he's a good boss. Yeah. Anyways, now let's talk about stress, Lee. Stress is not something new. It's a word, especially now during the COVID era. A lot of us goes through different levels, different kinds of stress. But what can you share with us, with the viewers today? What do you do to release your stress?
Well, let me throw that question back before I answer it. Sure. So what have you done, or what's your favorite way of releasing your stress?
I listen to the jazz music.
I thought you were going to say you cook.
Well, cook is a necessity. That could lead to stress because it's a chore. You have to cook. If you don't cook, you don't eat, But, it's very stressful now. Yeah, working from home as a mother you still have a 7-year-old daughter who screams at, who hungers for your attention. Yeah, this kind of music. So I have jazz music sometimes plays on while I'm doing my work. So that releases a bit of my stress.
Okay. Well, I think everyone feels, busy during the workday, and stress is what probably comes around because we feel overwhelmed by the amount of work that we have to do, or we feel overwhelmed by the emotions of that go through us during the workday. Managing stress helps you achieve your work to be done, helps you meet expectations. But more importantly, managing focus helps you exceed work expectations. That means it helps you to maybe, to exceed, to do really, really well in your daily work goals. I would suppose that first thing to do is to identify situations that are in your control, and identify situations that are outside of your control. There are certain things that we just don't, that are outside of our control at work. But then, what are the things that we can control to help us manage our stress better? So one thing is to prioritize, and in order to do that is to be able to enable ourselves to focus better. Eliminate interruptions. It's very, very easy for anyone during their workday to get carried away with focusing on menial tasks and focusing on the small issues that don't really matter. And then by the time it comes for you to look at the real matter at hand, it's already 5:30 p.m. It's time to go home, and you have half an hour left to accomplish your task. And then your presentation is the next day. So prioritize. Focus on what matters, focus on what is important, and then eliminate the interruptions. Do away with the office small chat. If you need a break, take a break. Go have a coffee. Go make yourself a cup of tea. Have a quick chat with friends. But eliminate the interruptions and stay focused at what is most important. Because after you complete that, you will probably still have enough time to then have a bit of relaxation, and then to spend a bit of time chit-chatting with colleagues in the pantry. Occasionally, cut yourself some slack. You need to be your own number one fan. If you don't love yourself, who else is going to love you more than yourself? If you don't love yourself, who else is going to love you better? So be your number one fan. Think about your achievements. Think about your achievements for the day. Now, what have I done today that I am happy with? What have I done this week that I am happy with? What have I done well this week? What are my strengths? How can my strengths help me achieve my goals? How can my strengths help me achieve my goal, and therefore help me complete this task, and therefore help me eliminate this stress? How can my strengths help me feel better? Because when you start focusing on the positives, you automatically move away from the negatives. And when you're positive, you are able to think better, you are able to rationalize better, you become less emotional, you don't need tissue paper for your tears, and you would then obviously be more effective. And this is why I say managing stress helps you finish your work, but managing your focus can really help you excel. It helps you to succeed. So be your own number one fan. Managing stress at work, obviously, you have short breaks and long breaks. There are things that you could do. You have desk exercises to prevent repetitive stress injuries. People, things like people who type a lot, or people who are, say, desk bound. Often they have back injuries. They might have neck injuries. They might have wrist injuries. They could have eye injury or eye stress from looking at the monitor for too long. So look at, doing small little desk exercises at your desk. Look at breathing exercises. One of my favorite techniques is to breathe in through the mouth and then breathe out. Hold the breath in your mouth and then breathe out through your nose. by doing that, usually when you take in the air through the mouth and you exhale through your nose, you will usually feel a slightly cooling sensation on your tongue. And that somehow would translate into a physical reaction to automatically help you feel a bit calmer, and also helps you feel a little bit cooler. Some people also practice a breathing technique where they would breathe in and hold their breath for 10 seconds, because when you hold your breath, then you also slow down your breathing. When you slow down your breathing, you slow down your heartbeat, and therefore you also bring your whole metabolism down as well. So that helps you keep calm. Outside of work, you said it, jazz music. Me, it's video games. There is no hard and fast rule how one may want to, release stress. Options are unlimited. Some people do meditation, they go to the gym, which I should do more often. They do yoga. Of course, look at activities that interest you. So like you said, listening to jazz music, video games, cooking, hobbies, look at hobbies, gardening, spending time with friends, socializing. But one thing that's very, very important that applies to everyone is, of course, a regular balanced diet, eat well, and sleep right. We must get enough sleep. Otherwise, if you go to work physically tired, then you are also mentally tired as well.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Sleeping is something that I don't negotiate with. I'm a cat. So if I don't get my sleep right, I'd rather call the day off the next day. So I make sure that I'm disciplined enough to switch off the light, switch off everything by 10 o'clock, 11 at the latest, and then wake up early so that you're fresh. No, absolutely. And I also agree I love the breathing technique. It's something that I do practice. Thanks for the reminder. I usually do it every morning, but not today. I don't know why, but thanks for the reminder. I'm going to do it right after this interview. Lovely.
Well, the breathing technique actually also applies to a lot of public speakers, to people who have to do a lot of presentations, to people who address a very large audience, because sometimes people with less experience of doing presentations would always encounter stage fright, stage fear before going on stage. And those breathing techniques really help them bring themselves down and calm themselves down before going on stage. And once you start, then you automatically, your mind is on a roll.
Yes. No, definitely. You know what I learned as well, Lee? After the corporate world, through MCO, you're doing your own company now. Some of us consultants are freelancing. There is the tendency of taking on board any opportunities that comes through your way, and that can be stressful as well, because you have this thing in your mind that what if that could be the right opportunity leading you towards monetary. So I should take that, and then another opportunity comes knocking at your door, and I'll take that as well. And then you're overwhelmed. You end up being overwhelmed with all these projects. So what I picked up is learn to say no. Learn to say no, and putting your attention. Also, what you mentioned just now as well. Putting your attention to where it's supposed to. Where it's supposed to be. So learning to say no would do you justice as well, isn't it?
Yeah. This is also learning to say no. Also, sometimes comes into play in employee-boss relationships, especially on sensitive issues like physical harassment, discrimination, sexual harassment. So, and this is where these are situations where they are more complex, and would often involve third parties to resolve. So sometimes it is necessary to take a stand. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Now, it's a bit more casual here, but what are the typical statements or talks that employees are talking behind bosses' back? What do they talk about you? What do you talk about your stakeholders, your owners?
Well, I think a very common trend is for a boss to have nicknames, to have maybe more than one nickname.
Depending on the situation. Yeah.
Yes. And depending on how well the boss is liked, the nickname could be a positive one or a negative one or even a very insulting one. And sometimes the boss finds out what the nickname is and sometimes they don't. But, things that employees talk about bosses behind their back could be both positive and negative. And also, don't forget, those positive and negative things can also be true or untrue. Even positive things could be untrue, and even negative things could be untrue. So, don't forget, things can be positive or negative, things can be true or untrue. There are always two sides, to the coin. And of course, when employees talk about their bosses, it's always work-related. So usually it would be work-related comments about the boss, whether the boss is good, whether the boss is bad, whether the boss is nice or the boss is nasty, or how the boss gave feedback, or how the boss scolded them. It could also be personal comments about the boss's personal life, about the boss's personal attributes. It could be because the boss is too tall, too fat, too thin, too short. It could be because of the boss's bad temper. It could be maybe the boss has a certain habit to scratch his head when somebody's talking to him, or all sorts of things. But something that is not right and unfortunately happens a lot is gossip. And I think gossip is not healthy. For bosses out there, I'm sure you know that for every boss out there, your employees are talking about you. And however, gossip is often, it's just popularism, it's just popular, true or untrue statements made by employees regarding their bosses. And gossip is unnecessary, unlike comments. Comments about the boss's work may be true or untrue, but gossiping is not necessary and does not play a role in a team's effectiveness. I'm sure you have encountered that as well, right?
All the time. All the time, yeah. So they do talk anyways, yeah? So do you want to, do bosses, do you want to bother? Is it something that you want to take in and worry about?
Well, I think a lot of bosses would ignore gossip. The one way to avoid this, or one way to eliminate this, is for the boss to lead by example. If you don't wish people to gossip about you, then don't give them any reason to. Don't give them any excuses to gossip about you. Lead by example. And sometimes, if you know that there is somebody, or if you know that there is gossip going on about you, then he or she may want to address it and say, hey, I know this news is going on about me and I would like to address this. And usually such reaction would very quickly nip the gossip in the bud.
Yeah.
Short and simple.
Yeah, just being very direct about. Just going back again on the question, when I was just starting up in an organization as a junior, It's getting a hang of colleagues in the office and proper professional environment and everything. So, you know, as a woman, we get very emotional. We tend to be pretty dramatic. So if you don't have time to gossip at the office, sometimes we go on Facebook and we start uploading.
Sorry, you go to what?
We go to Facebook, yeah,
Oh,
and
yes.
start uploading negative statements to just reflect on how you are feeling at that very day. And you know what happened? I had a good connection with my boss at that time. He actually commented, "Hey, Sarah, if you can, you know, be professional with your Facebook statuses, because could reflect on the company's reputation and everything." And that made me realize, oh dear, what am I doing? You know, I'm not my own anymore. I'm representing a company, so I should be stopping uploading such statuses. So maybe employees don't know it, so bosses should just mention that.
Correct. And all employees should also I know a lot of people do this, but all employees should also they should realize the fact that whatever they post on Facebook reflects not just the moment of how they feel when they do the posting, but it also reflects on the company. It also reflects on themselves.
Mm.
If you post 5 postings about how unhappy you are with your boss every day of the week, Monday to Friday, what does that say about you? So think about it, you know?
Yeah, it's self-reflection there. No,
Yeah.
definitely. So last but not least, before I let you go, you've worked in different companies before. You know, you've been worked in France before, once upon a time when you were very young, early 20s, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
that was just jobs.
yeah. So you work, okay, so in Asia, you've worked in China and Vietnam, Khmer, Cambodia, Malaysia, of
Oh, yeah,
course.
yeah.
Yeah. Are there any differences on, you know, uh, 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 on how bosses act in, you know, in their different cultures, different countries? What are your thoughts on this?
Bosses aside, you know, different countries obviously have different languages, different history and different culture, and those uh, historical factors shape, you know, each country and each culture. And human behavior, of course, is influenced by social economic factors. Therefore, employees and human behavior, you know, we are all governed by different entity, country, company culture. Therefore, similarly, bosses are also influenced by these very same factors. The other thing that also affects how bosses manage is the age factor as well. Now we are in the age of millennials. Now we are in the age of disruptors. You know, where there's a lot of technology disruption into processes, especially in the service industry. So every generation, whether you are 60 years old, 50 years old, 40 years old, 30 years old, 20 years old, every generation has developed its own abilities, has developed its own set of attributes and its own set of innovations. And these attributes and innovations and characteristics will go alongside with the social economic factors of, you know, culture, country, company culture as well. So therefore, bosses and employees all act and behave differently in different cultures and different countries. But again, I come back to the human truths. Everybody will resonate and come back towards the human truths. Everybody will resonate back into coming back into their salary, compensation, and benefits package. What salary are they on? Are they able to get more salary? When can they get more salary? Are they satisfied with their work? And also, do they have a steady career path? So everyone will resonate and orientate towards these issues. And this links to teamwork and the dynamics between the employee and the boss, because an effective team is not just a group of people who work together, but it's actually a group of people who trust each other in their work. And only then, when you trust each other, then, when you are able to share cross-share ideas and skills, that is when that particular team is going to be a super team. The ex-CEO of Starwood, Fritz van Paschen, he's now a keynote speaker for a lot of talks. He's also a consultant, and he's written some articles, and he wrote this particular article where he talks about that we now live in an era of crossroads. And his reference to crossroads was referring to connecting different ideas and skills. That means, I have an idea about A, B, and C, and I have this skill, and how these ideas and skills can connect across different cultures and across different disciplines and across even different time frames. Meaning to say, you connect these through other than cultures. We also try to connect these through very, very different skill sets and ways of thinking. And also, of course, and this also automatically means also across different age gaps. So you could be talking about maybe a 50-year-old CEO and a 25-year-old new employee. So obviously you cannot expect a 25-year-old employee to have 20 years of work experience behind him or her, but you can definitely expect a new set of skills and innovation from that person.
Yeah. So humans are humans. We all we have different breeds. It's so important.
Humans are humans, and bosses and employees are also humans. So
exactly.
that shows you the point.
Yes, exactly. Today's talk is very valuable. I mean, this is the basis, Lee, of why we came out with eTable Talk with Sarah. Like I mentioned earlier in my intro, it's to, number one, hopefully aid us to bring down the burnt out levels amongst working adults, which is very alarming. 6 out of 10 working adults do suffer mental health, and that is all due to stresses, burnt out, And second of all, the idea of this talk is also to help make future workplaces a better one for our younger generations. They need to know after college, there is more. And hopefully they listen into this kind of talks and not get shock of their lives on what's really happening out here in the working world.
Well, there's a future waiting for them, and I think the future is innovative, it's modern, it's exciting. So unlimited future.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Lee, for today. And for our viewers, the workplace is changing rapidly. Like what Lee mentioned earlier, it's a disruption. Technology is coming into play. And if you do have any situations, any that you are facing currently in your workplace, in your lives, feel free to message me in private. I'll be more than happy to engage a guru to help address through these table talks. And keep on sharing these videos. Do subscribe to the channel for more loadings. So Lee, thank you very much. I look forward to—
Not at all, it's been my pleasure.
Look forward to more future collaboration with you, and keep safe. I'll catch up with you soon.
Definitely. Thanks, Sarah.